The airbag in your car was built for one reason: to save your life. But what if the company that made it knew, before a single car left the factory, that it could kill you instead? What you're about to hear isn't a theory. It's on the record, confirmed by a federal grand jury indictment, documented in internal emails, admitted under oath by engineers who were there. The Takata Corporation, a Japanese manufacturer that supplied airbags to almost every major automaker on the planet: Honda, Toyota, Ford, BMW, General Motors. By the early 2000s, 1 in every 4 cars sold in America had a Takata airbag inside it. What followed became the largest automotive recall in human history. More than 100 million vehicles, 27 confirmed deaths, hundreds of injuries, shrapnel to the face, the throat, the chest, and the company had seen it coming for over a decade. To understand how this happened, you have to go back to the late 1980s. Takata started as a textile company: parachutes for the Japanese army in World War II, seatbelts in the 60s, airbags in the 80s. By the 1990s, they were competing at the highest level, and competing means cutting costs. At the center of the Takata airbag was a small metal canister called an inflator. When your car detects a crash, an electrical signal ignites a chemical inside that canister. The chemical explodes in a controlled way and fills the airbag with gas in less than 1/20th of a second. The chemical Takata chose for that explosion: ammonium nitrate. You may recognize that compound. It's the same substance used in one of the deadliest domestic terror attacks in American history. Takata's competitors looked at ammonium nitrate and said, "Too risky." The compound is highly sensitive to heat and moisture. Over time, it degrades. It becomes unpredictable. Most suppliers walked away from it. Here's what makes this story different from every other corporate scandal. In 1995, Takata itself filed a patent application that explicitly acknowledged the compound's instability. Their own engineers, in their own words, documented the risk. They filed the patent, and then they kept using the compound anyway. Why? Because ammonium nitrate made the inflator smaller. Smaller inflators meant cheaper production, and cheaper production meant they could underbid every competitor in the market. A rival company, Autoliv, was supplying airbags to General Motors. Takata came in with a lower price. GM told Autoliv, match it or lose the contract. The race to the bottom had begun. The year is 2000. Inside Takata's Moses Lake facility in Washington state, engineers are running deployment tests on the new inflators, and something goes wrong. An inflator ruptures. Not a gradual failure, an explosion, shrapnel flying outward at the speed of a gunshot. The engineers document it, they flag it, they send the data up the chain. What happens next is, by any measure, a deliberate crime. According to court testimony from Mark Lilly, a former Takata engineer who became a whistleblower, engineers were told they were not allowed to investigate the ruptured inflator. When Lilly protested, he was reassigned. A quality manager testified that he was directly pressured by an executive to manipulate the test data. The phrase the engineers used for this practice: torture the data until it confesses. By the year 2000, 3 named Takata executives had confirmed knowledge that the airbags could rupture. They did not tell automakers. They did not tell regulators. Instead, according to the Department of Justice, they ordered lab technicians to delete the testing data from their computers and throw the ruptured inflators in the trash. 4 years passed. In 2004, the first documented injury occurs. A Honda vehicle in Alabama. The airbag deploys in a minor collision and explodes. The driver survives. Honda and Takata classify it as an isolated incident. Another 4 years pass. 2008. Honda issues its first official recall. 4,000 vehicles, 4,000. Out of the tens of millions already on the road. Meanwhile, inside Takata, an American engineer named Kevin Schubert sends an internal memo. He writes that he has been repeatedly exposed to the Japanese practice of altering data presented to the customer. He adds that this conduct was described inside Takata as the way we do business in Japan. That memo was sent in January 2005. It sat on file for 9 years before a federal prosecutor ever read it. By 2013, the structure could no longer hold. Automakers began finding inflator failures in vehicles manufactured outside the original 2000 to 2002 window. What Takata's engineers internally called beta failures, a clinical term for a discovery that destroyed everything. The problem wasn't a manufacturing defect in one batch. The problem was the chemistry itself. Every ammonium nitrate inflator Takata had ever built was a potential weapon. The recalls cascaded. 3.6 million vehicles in 2013, 14 million by 2014, 42 million by 2015. The number kept climbing until it crossed 100 million, making this the largest product recall in the history of the automobile. 11 automakers, 19 car brands. Vehicles from 2002 to 2015. The NHTSA issued emergency warnings for owners in high humidity states. Florida, Louisiana, Texas. Hot, wet climates accelerated the degradation. In some 2001 to 2003 Honda and Acura models, regulators calculated a 50% chance of inflator rupture in the event of a crash. A coin flip between the airbag saving your life or ending it. In January 2017, Takata Corporation pleaded guilty in U.S. federal court. Wire fraud, concealment of a known defect, manipulation of safety data. The fine, $1 billion. $125 million earmarked directly for victims and families. 5 months later, overwhelmed by liabilities projected to exceed $24 billion, Takata filed for bankruptcy. The largest bankruptcy of a Japanese manufacturer in history. The company that had supplied safety equipment to the world was dismantled and sold to a Chinese competitor for $1.6 billion. Here's the thing that stays with me. The engineers who wrote these emails, the executives who gave the orders, they understood exactly what they were building. They understood that heat and moisture would degrade the propellant. They understood that a rupturing inflator would fire metal fragments into the face of whoever was sitting in the driver's seat. They weren't guessing. They had the data, and they deleted it. The question that regulators, lawyers, and the families of victims have been asking for 20 years is simple. At what point does a cost-cutting decision become a decision to kill people? Some people will tell you this was negligence, a series of failures, a culture that got out of control. I think the documents tell a different story. What do you think? Leave it in the comments. I read every one. Takata is not the only company that ran the numbers. In the 1970s, Ford Motor Company produced an internal document, now known as the Pinto Memo, that calculated to the dollar the cost of human lives versus the cost of a fix. They chose not to fix it. That story, the original blueprint for everything you just watched, is the next file. Click it.